In your first 9 months at Elty, you drove 700 million unearned paid media impressions. What's holding people back from achieving this level of exposure?
I was facing what everyone else is facing when you're at that stage. Lack of budget, lack of resources, and of course, the pressure of having results today.
Before we break down how she pulled this off, if you're not subscribed, now's the perfect time. We've been dropping episodes with the marketers who are actually moving the needle, and today is the final episode of Season 1. You're not going to want to miss next week's Season 1 recap. I've got some special plans.
Many companies, of course, have great products, and they think that because the product is great, so we don't need marketing.
Plus, coming up, you'll see why she changed her brand archetype from caregiver to a more general everyman type persona, how to measure brand success when you don't have a research budget, and the partnership pitch mistake that almost killed a major deal. And with that, let's dive right in.
Welcome back to Horizons Podcast, where I convince marketing leaders to spill their secrets with the rest of us. I'm your host, Nate Desmond, and today I'm thrilled to be sitting down with Alessia Morichi. Alessia is a global marketing leader and startup founder who I met when we were both still at Google. She has since gone on to co-found a health tech company in the US and now leads Marcom for another health tech company in Milan, Italy. Alessia, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Nate, for having me. I'm really excited to reconnect with you after, our old good days at Google.
My first question for you gets into some of what you're doing at your current company. A lot of marketers I talk with struggle to crack this area of organic growth or unearned media. And in your first 9 months at Elty, you drove 700 million unearned paid media impressions. What's holding people back from achieving this level of exposure?
Yeah, it's a great question, Nate. So first of all, we founded Elty actually as a new consumer brand because we wanted to make sure we were getting closer to our customers that are actually patients. Of course, being a cold, B2B brand was not really helping us to sell the product. So we switched, to a more consumer focused approach. And when we launched Elty, of course, we already had a previous brand, but nobody knew about this new brand. And of course, we need to find a way to make sure the news we're talking about the new brand, customers were getting to know us a little bit more compared to the previous month. And at the same time, I was facing what everyone else is facing when you're working startup at that stage. Of course, lack of budget, lack of resources, and of course, the pressure of having results today. And this is actually the main barrier when you're working in brand marketing because everyone is used to having the results, but not just the results. We want to have everything right now in our daily life. We take our phone, we order on DoorDash, and we get our food delivery in 30 minutes, right? So there is a sort of a urgency that is now characterizing our life. And the same type of urgency, of course, is right now also the type of approach that leaders want to have in the results. And this is kind of crash with what brand is because brand is a long-term relationship. So the first thing that is holding other company back, I think, is time. So if you want to have results tomorrow, you can't really, invest too much in brand. And I think the second point is that many companies, of course, have great products, and they think that having this product-led approach is already helping them sell the product itself because the product is great, so we don't need marketing. But marketing is a spare partner with product because, of course, some customers can bump into your product is great, and they're going to buy for the first time, so they're going to be first-time users, but they're not going to come back because they don't remember what was the brand that I was buying from. So that is where brand comes really handy. So in the second time purchasers, so that you want to have recurrent purchases. And this is where brand really plays a huge role. And the third point, I would say that it's more about an internal problem, about company organizational. Because when you organize a company and you create your classic company, org chart, you usually see these two big blocks. On one end, you have brand and awareness type of marketing teams. And on the other side, you have growth and performances.
Yeah.
And you kind of position on both of them as two separate entities while they work on the same funnel. So this is the biggest mistake, splitting these two budget and making sure that you should really avoid that your company is gonna treat these two teams as two different entities. They need to work together and bring these organic results, together in tandem. And I would say the third point is the comfort zone. In a market like Italy, where we are, especially in the healthcare, like followers, we are not pioneer in anything at this moment. We really tend to stay in our comfort zone. So we look at what competitors are doing, and we try to simulate also on the marketing campaigns what others are doing. So that worked very well in the past. So I'm gonna do something similar and see if I also get the same results. And this is actually killing your, not just the marketing campaigns, but also the vibe because you kind of position yourself at the same level of other competitors, and you are kind of eliminating what is your unique selling proposition because you can't really promote your product in the same way that your competitor is using. So I would say these are what essentially are holding back other company from achieving great results in organic marketing.
It's fantastic. I love that framework. And that last one in particular is interesting to me because I can see the value in looking at something that's already working to a certain degree and copying some of it. But I can also see where if you copy too much, it can just become another product that's exactly the same. And then why would I buy your product instead of the first one that you're copying from? How do you think about the business side and the consumer side? Because at LT, you have both business and consumer customers.
Yeah, this is a good point. Of course, we had to switch, our soul a little bit from like being B2B only to be like a B2B and B2C. And for sure, we had to really investigate what was motivating our users to buy. The healthcare industry in Italy is mostly like a public system, so we really like compete with the healthcare, the public, the national health care system. That on one end is not too bad because the wait list for doctor appointments, especially like especially the post appointment in Italy, are very long. So you might spend 6 months in the wait list. So we are competing with this long wait list. So for us was not just capturing demand, but the demand, but also like creating a demand. So because there are a lot of players, we were trying to find a way to capture this demand in a very unique way. And of course, nobody was thinking about brand as a solution, but in my vision, the brand was the key because positioning our company, our brand in a way that was different from other players in the market was a way to get closer to the users, especially in such like a delicate topic as your personal health. We couldn't really play the game as like, oh yeah, we are the cool, very cold professional brand because that is what everyone else is doing. But we trying to really smooth a little bit the tone of voice and make sure that we were kind of staying at our user side and be like your doctor friend. Like everyone has a doctor that has a friend that we can text on WhatsApp and say, hey, I have this strange migraine today. What can it be, right? So we really wanted to be like a partner for our users and not just like a professional, like a product and brand for them. Yeah, and this is was the of course the main switch for us. But of course, as you were saying, it's very easy to copy what everyone else is doing, especially when you're working on like multiple markets. This is not the case in my current company, but where I was at Google, when we were working together, I was managing multiple markets, and it was very hard to replicate the same strategy, although it was the same brand. I was working for Android One at that time, but we couldn't really replicate the same campaigns in every market because every market has a very specific context. Users are very like unique, so you really need to think about not just your target audience, but also the why behind every purchase in each single market.
And that's fascinating because I think when we often talk about localization, we really just mean translation. We take the same thing we're running globally and we translate into whatever language for the market. But what you're saying is you really need to understand different insights in each market. When you were running Rita, or you were a co founder at Rita Health in the US, a fertility company, did you see localization come into play there, even within the US of different states within the US? Or was that something you're able to serve one larger market?
Good question. I think that the US itself is a big market, and for sure, what was interesting at that time when I was funding my startup in the US was to see the difference between different states. Of course, states like California at that time were like much more like open and much more like um, also like users were like willing to pay much more compared to other states because of on their like higher incomes compared to other states. I think that specifically for Rita, I didn't see a lot of like differences between the states. But what was really useful to to see was that we run a study because, of course, before building the product, we also trying to validate our AI model by building a study, and we could see how different states had different healthcare situations for women. Of course, we really noticed that in certain states it was really hard to get some minorities into a proper healthcare assistance, and in some other states was very hard to actually create awareness around the product because I was working fertility, and in some states the fertility topic is still like a taboo, but at the end of the study we were able to reach 99% of the states, so we could cover the study by using users from all the states, and that was really for us a great achievement.
That's awesome. As someone who works in insights and analytics, if you can get representation across the region and not just say, oh, we surveyed the US, but it was one city, that's a big win. I want to go
Exactly.
deeper on the taboo part because that was a really interesting aspect of Rita. Fertility is not an area that a lot of people necessarily want to talk about. And so, as a company growing in that space, it can be hard to break through to people. But you grew sales 5x in 6 months, I think, in 1 6 month time period. What led to that 5x growth?
Yeah, that actually was a great result that I achieved while I was in my PU experience at KEG. Because, of course, when I founded my company, Rita, I was not, of course, I was not a veteran from the fertility industry, but it was already my second experience in the femtech industry. Because prior, I worked at KEG, that was a part of Lady Technologies. Lady Technologies is a startup that is producing a fertility tracker that is monitoring cervical fluid. Cervical fluid, as you can imagine, first of all, is something that you don't see in everyday life. So already for the majority of the users, it's something that was already like new. Everyone was wondering what the heck is this fertility mucus or like a cervical mucus and so on. So it was a mix of taboo, but also I would say, and I say this like with the total like candor, it was a mix also of ignorance because while I was working fertility, I actually realized that I'm a woman. For 35 years of my life, I didn't know anything about my body. So I think that we're really not educated around these topics at all. So this comes from our backgrounds, like school backgrounds, family backgrounds. Plus, the majority of the studies around the female bodies were really like run in recent years. We're talking about the 90s. While
Wow.
yeah. So I think if I'm not wrong, they started to include women in like a pharmaceutical research all in the 90s, like 1993 or something like that. So I think it was this specific like a mix of you know um, blind spots altogether that really like made this industry a taboo, I would say. So back to your question, five pair in sales in 6 months. So when I joined the company was just launching the first product to the United States that was an FDA registered fertility tracker. And as in many other stories from founders, I had no team, no budget, and I had to find a way to kind of boost this sales. So
Yes.
when you don't have budget and you don't have a team, what do? You just dig into your you dig into your network and you're trying to understand what kind of help I can get from outside.
Smart.
Of course, I try to partner with brands that are already like in our situation, or they were in our situation just few months before than us. So at that point, they already had like a base, a custom base that we could leverage, and we partner with them. So of course, with different like commercial models. So with some of them, we were like running like a pure brand partnership. So like you know uh, visibility for visibility type of exchange with other brands. We run proper like affiliate programs. So partnership, affiliation. Of course, we work with few influencers in the fertility space, but not just in the fertility space. We're really trying to go into the lifestyle part because, as we were saying, going to the fertility space was a bit risky because we were really not sure we were talking to a broader audience. Probably we were talking about our product to just a specific audience. So to expand the reach, we say, okay, let's go out of this, like try to conceive a group of women, and let's talk to also like women that one day they would love to become mothers. So we leverage moms influencers, lifestyle influencers, and we're trying to make this product like a lifestyle product with a really like limited amount of budget. So we really invest like a few $100s per influencer, and we're trying to kind of create a sort of like a growth loop based on these influencers' reviews. And the third part was the seeding. So seeding is something that unfortunately is extremely time consuming because you need to really like spend your like day posting about your product in forums like Reddit, Facebook groups, sharing on WhatsApp like and Telegram groups. You really need to make sure that your product is out there and people are getting the news. So this was for me like a bit of like a marketing hack that we use to, you know, crack our like a sales recipe without budget and without team. And
That
of
is
course,
awesome.
just one last comment on that. Never forget about the network because the CEO Christina had a great network with other founders. So of course, being part of like other networks really help us to get out of the hole in those cases in which like the taboo was really like going against us. For example, on social media, we were really I would say like many times blocked by Meta because of the type of campaigns we're running. Like, of course, it was considered like a very sensitive type of product, but for Facebook, it was considered like sex toy. So we are not running, of course, any sex toy, campaigns, but the similarities with the product was really like, I would say it was very close, and our ads were most of the time like blocked. Finding allies in the network, someone who is really experiencing your same pain, was for us a great starting point to boost the sales and get the help that we couldn't get from our team or the budget.
Yes, yes. And it's interesting how I think a lot of people have more of a network than they realize, but they don't leverage it. And if you really build into the network you have, there's a lot that is achievable. I want to go back
Yeah, I mean,
though to the
sorry, I
five.
was about to say one quick comment on that.
Yes.
That is something that is very interesting about the United States. I think that once I moved to the Silicon Valley, I really had to put myself out there. It was something that in Italy I was really like reluctant in doing because, of course, I was like, oh, nobody's gonna ever reply to my message. Why does this person need to reply to my LinkedIn like DM? I think once I was in the US, I think that it kind of became part of like a daily life to networking with people and trying to see if I could help people because I know that if I was helping someone, at one point that person was also like willing to help me. And of course, I'm extreme like I'm also like a mentor in my. I try to at least mentor startups twice a week. So I really love to make sure that everyone gets the right support, but I don't take this for granted. So I really trying to, do as much as I can to help other people to set up their business and set up their, success. Also, when they don't have the right resources.
Yes. Yes. And I feel like that is really a strength of being in a place where there are a lot of companies doing a similar thing that you can network together more. I'm very curious to go back to the 5x. So you grew sales 5x. There are all these different levers. If you were going in again to do this, which one would you prioritize? Chips, social media? What would be your first priority?
Good question, because I would say that I see like these things are always like returning, right? I would say right now I would say again social media. Although at that time social media were like a part of the marketing mix, but they were not the king of our channels. Right now I would say social media because of course they are gaining like a huge importance again. We are very close to the same type of marketing mix importance that we had back in 2012 when social media were just like popping up.
And when you look at social media, and you mentioned 2012 compared to now, what are the differences in how you would recommend approaching social media?
Well, good question. At that time, I think that there was a lot of like top-down communication. So I think that when the brands approach, for example, Facebook at that time, they really treated Facebook as like an extension or other like mediums media. For example, the communication was pretty much like rearrangement of a press release. Okay, we're gonna have a press release about our product launch, and I'm gonna make a social media post on Facebook. Right now, of course, we saw that this approach is not sustainable anymore. Right now, we already transitioned to user-generated content approach like a few years back, and right now, I think that brands they took back their own identity. So it's clear when there is like a branded post compared to like a user post, but they're really trying to I would say find a way to speak to users with a more like a consumer slash friendly tone of voice. So right now, you would see like some brands from the fashion slash, you know, I don't know, like I would say also like the automotive. They're talking in a really like casual way to customers, and you would think, is this really the tone of voice that belongs to this brand? But yes, the answer is that on social media brands can't really talk with a very authoritative or like very official, tone of voice.
True. How do you manage that? Let's say your current company at Elty, how do you manage the tone of voice on social media versus the brand image of the company, especially when it's a healthcare company and you need to be authoritative and have this trust?
Yeah, good question. This is something that we really trying to work since day one of the brand. Because initially our like brand archetype was the caregiver. Of course, all the brands in the healthcare system, they are trying to push this type of archetype because they take care of you. They are at your side when you need them. But then I really found that there was a bit of an unbalanced relationship between the caregiver and the customer, right? Because if you think about the typical caregiving situation, like I don't know, you have like someone old into your family was sick, right? It's almost like a one-way relationship, so you are giving something to this person who is sick. But this is not the type of relationship we wanted to build with our customers. We wanted to have like a two-ways relationship. So I then suggest to my CEOs in the company, why we don't shift from a caregiver archetype to a new archetype, like a brand archetype. Why we don't try to be the everyday man? So of course the everyman. So the everyman, of course, is a more like a plain type of character. Sometimes you don't really notice this brand, but at least is equal to you. I
Fair.
want to really create a brand that talks your same language, especially in the healthcare. Like we don't want to have people that they don't understand what you are talking about. Too many like technical terms, and we really wanted to make sure that we were creating a very accessible type of service, and this was passing through a very accessible language to our communication.
How do you keep that consistent across everyone who's engaged in emails and posting and various channels? How do you make sure the acronyms don't start slipping out?
Yeah, good question. This actually was a big challenge. While I was working at a brand, the first thing that I did was mapping all the channels, and not just the communication channels, but also internal channels, internal tools, and so on. And I trying to make sure that at least everything that was external facing was going out with the same type of voice, same wording, and it was not so easy because, of course, like if for like I don't want to say a decade, but for many years you're running like a brand, and then from one day to another one is which tone of voice is which name is which everything. It really can create a disruption in people's lives. So of course, doing things gradually was one of the key because we couldn't really do everything at the same time. The risk was too big, so we really like deployed things one by one. And then I would say that I try to also um, prepare the team. I try to educate the team on the importance of doing this, and I work a lot internally as well. So not just externally, but also internally. And I bet that everyone really like welcomed the brand with really open hearts and open minded. Although, as I was saying at the beginning, there was this urgency of seeing the results right now, seeing the results tomorrow, and the big question: what is the contribution of brand to the revenues? Is still like there. Nobody is forgetting about the big question.
Or how do you still manage that question of when are we going to see results from brand? What does success look like for brand marketing?
Yeah, of course. This is something that I don't think there is an answer like that is gonna really cover this question, but it's a process. I would say that the best thing to do if you have a budget is to run pre and post campaigns and make sure that you have both control group with I don't want to say haters, but followers and non-followers. But in my current life, I don't have a budget for like external researches. So what I do to really monitor the success is keeping track of multiple layers of KPIs. For example, I don't use the traditional like, okay, what's the reach? What's the the impression. I'm trying to go beyond that, and I'm trying to see how the activities on the brand part are also impacting the lower part of the funnel. I give an example. I'm running a campaign, like an organic campaign on LinkedIn. So basically, we are working on some B2B campaigns or I don't know, otherwise like a B2B or B2C campaign on LinkedIn. And we want to see what is the impact on the business.
Yeah.
What can you do? Of course, you can't see sales the day after this campaign. Of course, you can, but I'm trying to look for metrics. And for example, LinkedIn give us useful information about the composition of your fan base. So I see and I keep monitoring how many CEOs or C levels, or for example, HR, like HR head of HRs, are following our page on LinkedIn. So I use this to motivate, our CEOs and say, you see, this is working for the business because I'm bringing on board some potential leads for your business. So who is now following our page is a very warm audience, are not just random like users or just once like a follow to your page and now they're still seeing your content. But at the same
Yeah.
time, I built a dashboard, I'm trying to really like make sure that nothing was left to chance. But I built a dashboard that is covering awareness, consideration, like the different part of the funnel, and I'm trying to really identify one single KPI for each of these part, up to 5 KPIs for each part, and I'm trying to monitor this. Of course, we start with
Interesting.
press mentions. Press mentions, and you mentioned before that I reach 140 mentions in 9 months. What I can also do, I check what's the prestige of this press mention. Are these like newspapers tier one, tier two? What's the reach of this magazine? And the other part that is very important, and try to quantify, for example, a media value for each of these articles. We are talking about organic articles, so we don't pay to get published. So this means that, of course, is organic. I have an agency working for us, and I'm trying to say, okay, I pay the agency like a monthly fee, but at the same time, I get, I don't know, 10 articles a month. What's the media value of these articles? So, of course, this is a way for me to make sure that the brand is talking numbers, that the
Yeah.
sales team or the strategy team is the same language that they're talking about.
That is awesome. So very rigorous on what are the almost leading indicators of future success, because that future success can take quite a long time to measure. One of the things I'm curious about on LinkedIn, which I've noticed for myself personally, is sometimes the sales cycle can be quite long. And for me personally, sometimes I've come across something that's like, oh, that's a really cool company I'd love to work with, or that's a product I'd love to buy. And then I forget about it. And then I had this last weekend. I remember now I really need this product, but I forget who mentioned it or where it was. And if that person isn't continuing to post, I might never be able to find it. Like the one I'm trying to remember from this weekend, I still haven't found yet. I'm just hoping they post again. How do you make sure that you are not only there during the life cycle, but that you're also available at the moment when the person is ready to make a decision or go to the next step?
Yeah, that is actually a good question and a great challenge. I would say that we're trying to make sure that our content is going outside the current reach, because if we make a social media post and the social media post is just viewed or liked by our like a current custom base on LinkedIn, like we're not gonna go anywhere, right? So we trying to I don't want to use this word, but I'm gonna use it. We trying to go viral with our content. So in that way, we are gonna make sure that first of all we're gonna reach a broader audience, and at the same time we're gonna expand the long tail of the content. So back to your question, maybe in few days some other friends of yours are gonna like the same content that you saw, and then that content is gonna come back to you because of the virality type of algorithm. So this is our strategy in that sense. Second of all, the frequency. We work with one of the best agency in Italy, and we're trying to make sure that we are posting on a very specific time of the day, but also with a huge frequency, because um, this is also like a bit of the trick. If you stop posting, the channel is gonna deprioritize your figure, your profile compared to others that are posting much more often, right? So they want to keep the audience engaged, so they use you, it or my company, as a way to engage with the final audience. The frequency of posting is also quite important. And I would also say that the last, not least, is the type of content you're posting. You need to be, of course, relevant for the channel, relevant for the moment. And being relevant to the moment is something that really requires creativity compared to being relevant to the channel. Because being relevant to the channel, and like playbook. If you Google what's the best content format for YouTube, you're gonna get it. Or what's the best content format for Instagram, you're gonna get it, right? But the where you can make the difference is the type of content, the relevance for the moment, the relevance for the culture and for the market and for the user. This is where the creativity comes really like handy, because it's gonna make the difference in that sense.
Oh, that's awesome. One of the things I noticed there is you mentioned hiring the best agency to do this. And you've mentioned a couple of other, like the PR agency, the partnerships you did at Keg. How do you find the right partners, the right agencies that can really deliver this growth and avoid the many, many who can't quite deliver on what you might need?
Good question. On the current situation, I played a bit of a, I fell into the trap of going to the comfort zone. That means that I look at what type of agencies our competitors were using, and I try to engage these agencies for two main reasons. The first one is because if they work with one of our competitors, they know the market very well. They're not like, I would say like it's not the first time for them that are entering the topic, the market. They know the users very well. And the second time, again, like many companies prefer at this point to bring social media or, for example, like the PR, activities in house. But this requires a huge amount of like a huge budget, right? So at one point, I think it's a sort of like a growth process. When you reach a certain scale, you bring this type of teams in house. We are not there yet, so we are really happy to work with these agencies. We have like a lot of incredible people working at our side, and it's a mix of scouting them, seeing what was working for other companies, and then doing the same. Of course, with press, it is a bit different because on the press side, you need to really rely on agencies that have great relationship with journalists. On the social media content side, is a bit different. On the press, relationship with journalists and the media are still they still have like a huge role in the success.
It makes sense. And you mentioned a few different channels: press, social media, influencers, partnerships. To what degree do you think the marketing job is to find the next big channel? And to what degree is the marketing job to become really good at a channel that will continue to be relevant 10 years into the future?
And this is a great question as well, Nate. I think that it's always based on the stage of your company. Because of course, if you are in an early stage company, you have other problems. You don't really want to think about, what is going to be the next big marketing channel, right? So I think you need to be always with the, one ear and one eye, towards the market and see what is going on there. And I give you an example about the AI. Everyone is talking about, what's next with the AI and marketing. What's next with AI and marketing? And I think that we're not talking about now making the new moon landing. I think that for us that are in a like scale up type of the biggest challenge would be to use these current channels in the most ROI positive way. Plus, making sure that we are not being like late to the game, for example, with AI. So if I think about the next year strategy, I would probably keep the marketing mix very similar to the current one, and I would try to make sure that we are optimizing the AI tools to save some, money. So like for some cost savings. B, I would say also for capitalizing on the opportunities, because as I was mentioning before, thanks to, for example, ChatGPT, a lot of content like blog articles, press, and so on, they're getting discovered, right? So you need to make sure that what the users are finding out about your brand, first of all, is a fresh content, is not outdated, so the information is still relevant. And second of all, there is a sort of coherence between the brand and the product and the story. So you don't want to leave anything to the
That makes sense. That makes sense. Okay, I want to go back to when you were starting your own company, because you've worked at very large companies like Google, you've worked at scale ups like the one you're at right now, and you've started your own company from scratch. What do you think are the number one jobs for marketing at, let's just say, those three levels? So massive company, scale up, and new startup. What's the number one focus that someone in marketing should be thinking about?
Good question in it as well. I'm like, you don't disappoint me anytime. Well, I think that for me, I found my secret recipe in finding a framework for launching product. And this really helped me to either save money or save time when I was about to launch a product, whatever was the stage of the company I was working at. So, of course, at Google, I launched probably like 12 or 15 different phones for Android. I had the chance, of course, to understand what are the key points for like a go-to-market works or not. And once I moved to the startup world, for me, it was quite easy to say, okay, this is the current picture in this company, this is the budget, this is the team, this is the market. I knew immediately what I should do for the product launch, right? So I had I would say finding the best way to balance your resources and keeping the focus is quite important without forgetting the vision, because this is another like important thing. Sometimes we are so caught up in our like daily life. Oh, I need to do this email campaign. I need to check this social media post. I need to speak with the agency, that we really forget about the vision. So keeping the vision is kind of like the hardest part, because it's kind of like your like life value, right? How many times in your current life you think about, oh, these are the core values of my life? You don't, because you need to think about, oh, I need to make food for my family, I need to go and buy groceries, or I need to go to Pilates. So you don't really have time to really stop and think about the upper level, right? So that is for me the thing that I would really recommend to every marketer. Don't forget about the vision, and trying to make sure that this vision is guiding you in every little step towards your, not just your career, but also your like daily goals in your startup.
How often would you reevaluate that vision? So like at Rita Health, you were co-founder for almost 4 years. Would you evaluate every year, every certain milestone? How often would you take a step back?
Good question. I would say that every milestone is a good time frame, because, of course, you don't want to change your vision too often, right? Because the vision is part of your of who you are, right? So if you change your vision too often, it really means that you don't have very strong values at your core, right? So I would say after milestones is a good timing for reflection and for like sitting down with your co-founder and think about what should we do I mean, what we should do differently in the future, what was working very well or not. But this is something that I also do in my personal life. I really, I don't do journaling a lot, but I really tend to, stop and think a lot about, what was the great action that brought me to the success, or to a failure. Because of course, let's not forget about failure. We mentioned so many times in this, you know, uh, hour of chat the success, but it's more important to think about failure than success, because if you know what brought you to a failure, you can avoid it. It's much more like easy in this way compared to think about, oh, what brought me to success, because that is it can really not depend by your own actions.
Yes, that is one of the fascinating things in really all of life, especially in marketing, that you can get a great result from a completely failed way of getting there and it looks great, but actually it was just good luck that maybe I ran a terrible marketing campaign and someone mentioned my product on a podcast. And so suddenly I got great results, but it wasn't because of my campaign at all. It was some other thing that happened. I want to go back to partnerships because this is something that struck me as really interesting about your previous work. You've done a lot with partnerships. What do you think is the difference between a partnership that turns out to be a waste of time and a partnership that actually drives a lot of sales?
Good question. I'm not gonna mention the brands in this case. It's still a sensitive, I would say, a sensitive deal. But I was once working on a partnership between two big brands, and I remember the pitch was really focused on the wrong insight. So we were trying to pitch our service to this partner and say, oh, we're gonna make sure you're gonna save a lot of budget next year in customer assistance. You're gonna be able to really cut down the budget, like a people budget and so on. And then when we met with this partner told us, well, we don't care about cutting the cost. For us, cost is not a problem. For us, we want just to be your partners, to be at your side, because we want to be the first one to launch this partnership into the market. So I feel that that for me was really like kind of it really opened my eyes on how to work on partnership. You always need to think about what you bring into the offer, like because you need to find the right balance between what you want and what the partner wants. It is also a little
Yes.
bit like this the same compromise that that you create when you are communicating with the users, right? You want to sell a product, and the user is not there just because he wants to buy your product, right? You need to convince that there is a reason why he needs this product. That for sure is something that we need to keep in mind when we work on partnership. And second of all, I think we need to look at very different angles and trying to sometimes work on a blind on a white paper and think about, okay, how can we build this partnership in a successful way? Because
Yeah.
again, if we stick to the usual metrics, okay, product sold and awareness, that is not maybe like the right way to approach the partnership.
I want to go back to, I think it's 2015. You were an adjunct professor of brand marketing and a few other areas you're teaching classes in Milan. Do you feel like that time as a professor changed how you approach marketing as a marketing leader?
First of all, being a professor was always my dream. I wanted to be a professor in Italian literature, but then when I was very young, my father told me, listen, it's going to be very difficult to have a career. So really think thoroughly about this decision. So I had to abandon that dream and I pursue my marketing career. Of course, being a professor at the university was the same university where actually I graduated. On one end, it was a really huge satisfaction for myself. At the same time, I really put myself in different shoes because, of course, coming from the when you graduate, you're like you still live the dream of, oh, I know very well how marketing works. I studied this on the books. These are the principles. This is the value proposition. This is like the advertisement budget, and then you really eat the real life. You see that everything is totally different, that in many occasions nobody really know the marketing theory. You enter like in companies and nobody thinks about the presentation with the shiny slides, right? So I think
Yeah.
it really made me think about how can I help my students and future marketing leaders in approaching marketing in a more pragmatic way. So one of the first lessons I actually held was about analytics, because this is something that nobody actually teach you at university. So they all talk about how to run, a media campaign, out of home, digital. But at the time, I mean, when I was at university, digital was not even a thing. But nobody is really tell you how to then track, and tracking the campaigns is key to replicate the success or the failure of your campaign. So I actually organized the first workshops, a few hours of workshop on Google Analytics, and trying to make sure that everyone in the classroom was comfortable with, looking at the data and say, okay, I see this volume of users coming every day, recognize some patterns, and trying to think about what can I get out of this information, because that is
Yeah.
also the strategic thinking that you need as a leader. Because without the data analysis, you can't really plan anything, you can't really strategize, you can't really get any insight on on your campaign. And we're talking about audiences. Are my users young, old, female, male? Are they using phones? Are they using iPhones? Are they
Yeah.
using androids? So it's really interesting, and these are very key pieces of information for running a successful campaigns. Then the second part, I would say that it made me really glad about being a university in a period without phones, because that was, of course, already the time of phones, during the lesson. So in many occasions, I had to remind people that nobody's forced to be in the class, as nobody's forced to be at work, right? So we were all there to kind of progress in our journey together, but I was really grateful for my time at university without cell phones and WhatsApp and social media getting my attention away from what I was studying.
It is crazy how much that stuff can distract very, very, very heavily. You've taught students, you've also hired people, led teams, built teams. How different is it helping a student to learn marketing versus helping a existing marketing professional to grow in their career?
I feel from my experience, I found it much easier to mentor peers and to mentor, young professionals in my company compared to teaching at the like in the academic world. I think that this comes from like mostly from I would say the arrogance about us as a student. When we are at university, we always think that we know everything, right? Uh, the professor is an idiot that any other this sort of like unbalanced relationship very something that we take probably from our like a family relationship, right? Like that we always think that the adults, they always want to force us to do things that we don't want, and we bring that type of approach, I think, in the university context, while it's much, I think, easier to mentor young professionals because they know that their future relies on you, so they're really open to learn, they're really open to grab as much as they can to grow their knowledge, grow their career, see what they can do to really be empowered and move to the next step. And I think it's quite fascinating because while I was young, in my first internship, I had a very great mentor, but she was the opposite of a micromanager. She always told me like, this is the task, just do this task by the end of this week, and then it was up to me to figure out how to do this task. And it's something that really, is really stuck into my mind because I try nowadays to have the same approach with the people who are working with me. I don't like to tell them how to do things because, of course, they're never gonna, develop any type of like strategic thinking or problem solving if I already solved the problem for them. And yeah, and I try to mix theory and practical examples. So I can tell you this, like in my current company, when we are like, I would say like 2 years ago, they were the first brand interns. I remember that once every 2 weeks we used to sit down and have like a very theoretical type of discussion about marketing and how, for example, product marketing is behaving and how brand marketing is behaving. So we are really digging into what does a product marketer does and what a brand marketing like manager does. So we're really trying to make sure that they were really equipped with the right knowledge to approach their daily task.
That is awesome. When you think about mentoring, and for maybe people who want to become a mentor themselves, how do you balance the very tricky balance of saying, I see what you need, this is the answer, versus I'm going to ask questions to help you get there?
I feel that back to the arrogance. I mean, sometimes when we also mentor people, we think that we know everything, right? So
True.
I already been there, and also sometimes with our friends we do the same. Okay, I already been there. This friend like is just like a silly person who doesn't really like listen too much. The truth is that we really never know 100% the reality and the picture that this, for example, like this new founder is experiencing, right? I recently mentored a female founder here in Milan, and I was focusing a lot about marketing strategies and SEO strategies and acquisition. For example, like I took for granted that the brand part at that point was clear for her. And she actually needed much more help with the like basic brand stuff, or how the brand is gonna impact the UI and the UX of the product, and this kind of like like a situation. So I think that before giving advices, it's always important to let the person speak and be clear on what are the goals of the mentorship and also what the journey, right? Because it can be like a one-off chat. So in one-off chat, you can, crazy, you can say whatever you want, and it can be more like, a chat in front of a beer with your friend. But if it's gonna be a journey together, maybe like 5 to 6, meetings together, I think you need to be clear what are the goals and what are the needs without, starting like with the, 50 gears. Say, okay, these are the things that you're supposed to do to be a great marketer. So listen instead of like talking.
Yes. Listening is incredibly powerful and shockingly hard to do. I've been practicing this thing called active listening, which I'm sure you've done as well. And I find so active listening, for anyone who's not familiar, is supposed to be I'm trying to listen to understand what you're saying rather than to then say what I want to say next. But it's so hard to truly listen and not get distracted by like, oh, that's interesting. Here's what I might say next. And then suddenly I'm thinking about what I want to say rather than what the person is saying.
Yeah, I think something that, if I'm not wrong, was also part of the radical candor approach. Probably you're familiar with the concept because it's something that Google really care about the radical candor of feedback. So active listening is part of that, right? You are not supposed to jump into conclusions, jump into giving your suggestion to just to demonstrate that you are great, you're like better than this person, but really sit down and first make this person like heard, and then think about what you can do together to help this person, right? And because it's very hard to tell someone, I mean, it's actually very easy to say to someone what to do, but then for that person to take that suggestion into actions, right? It is a, now that, it's not a secret, but I'm approaching like a motherhood. It's the same with kids, right? You always say, oh, you should do that. And I told you to do that. But actually the best thing to do is, okay, they're crying, let them cry because of course there is something that is bothering them, and then work together on moving to the next phase, to the next step, and see how this very powerful synergy can really benefit for both of you. So I would say that it's the same for mentorship, it's the same for like feedback session with your either with your peers but also with young professionals in your company.
That is awesome. Okay, before we run out of time, I would love to dive into a lightning round. So, the lightning round, I'll throw out some quick questions. Feel free to give brief answers, longer answers as you like. The first question: Italian or Silicon Valley market approach?
Silicon Valley approach.
Earned media or paid media?
I would say paid media. I know it's quite controversial, but I mean, there is no organic without paid, but at the same time, no paid without organic. But if you have some paid media, that would make the difference.
Long term brand building or short term growth hack?
Depends how long you want to stay in the company, I would say, because of course, if your horizon is quite long in the company, you also can enjoy the beauty of seeing your brand growing and developing and success coming back. So all the seeds are finally sprouting, but of course, like seeing the results from a performance marketing campaign instantly also give you some type of satisfaction.
Love that analogy of seeds that you're planting these seeds and in the future the brand seeds are going to grow, but you have to wait. That's a great analogy. Global or local marketing strategy?
This is a tricky one because I actually see that there is a sort of fascination, especially in the local markets, for the global. So it's almost like an entity or the global. Like they always they give the budget, they give the global strategy, and it's up to you to run the localization and use the budget in a very wise way. But I would say that working on local campaigns is much more rewarding because you can get into these different angles of communication and these narrative that are very peculiar and specific to the market that really they really make you think that you are doing like a job in a way that nobody else can see that.
Marketing automation or personalized touch?
Maybe this is the most tricky of all the questions. Automation really helps. I would say that I would go for automation.
Influence or authority when it comes to leadership?
This is easy for me because I'm a huge supporter of the kind leadership, and the kind leadership focus, the entire theory on influence people and not position yourself in a very authoritative way with your team. So obviously that influence entire life.
Last question: customer interviews or surveys?
Oh, I love surveys. I love surveys because you need to sit down and to think about what are these 20 questions that users can answer while they're also busy with other things. So you need to be really good at finding them, make sure they are really like relevant questions for the customer, but also for your company. And then you need to spend time analyzing the data and see how you can transform these quantitative data in qualitative information. So I think the survey.
Fantastic. Well, thanks so much for coming on.
Hey, thank you so much for having me, and hope to see you soon.